Hello, and welcome back. If this is you coming back from another video, if you've seen my face before, hello, fab to have you here. If this is the first video of mine that you're seeing, hello, welcome, I'm Nick. Lovely to have you here. If you like what you see today, please give this video a thumbs up and also consider giving me a subscribe. I'm relatively new to the YouTube gig and I would love to be able to talk with you a little bit more. So today I'm going to talk to you about something that's a little bit more personal. I mentioned in my Get to Know Me video, my first video, that I am part of the LGBT community. So I am a gay, cisgendered male. And what that means is that my gender identity is the same gender that I was assigned at birth. And as a gay man, I crush exclusively on dudes. So that is that for me, and you'll have seen that by my celebrity crushes. I also realised how many insanely attractive people I left out of that celebrity crushes, but anyway, we're not here to talk about that. So what I wanted to share with you today was my coming out story, a little bit of that journey. And I must caveat, this is my personal experience only. I cannot speak to anybody else's personal experience. We've all had a different journey. This just happens to be the one that I have been on. And I hope that it's interesting in some way to you. So I came out at the age of 18, but I was first referred to or labelled as gay at the age of 8. And we all know, we've all been school kids once, they can be mean. And I was, I was probably no exception. I am sure I have my moments of being not the kindest. But I was first labelled it at the age of 8. I did not know realistically what that meant. I was 8 years old. I had no interest in, dating, anything like that. You're 8. All you care about is playing, we used to play shade to shade at school and run across the field and all this stuff, You didn't care about any of that stuff, or I didn't at least. But anyway, I was first labelled out of it, and that carried on throughout my whole school career. So probably, mostly, I would say, from the age of 8 to the age of 16, I was consistently labelled as gay. And that was probably because maybe I was a little bit more feminine in terms of some of my mannerisms, or there were obviously certain traits that people were picking up on that caused them to label me as that. Now, of course, you could attribute that to also being camp, and the two aren't mutually exclusive. You can be a camp gay man, or you can be a camp straight man, or you can be a camp woman, or anything really, but I was always labelled as gay, and it was always in a very derogatory sense. It was always very aggressive in terms of it, and it was something that was always perceived to be wrong. And that was how I grew up thinking about it. I remember thinking, there's something wrong with me, clearly, but I didn't know what that was. I hadn't figured out at that time who I was as an individual. I didn't know, to be honest. So I kept being called this and thinking, why is this a bad thing and why am I exhibiting this? So I tried desperately to fit in throughout the years, and I will insert some photos as we go through. I was awkward, and you can see it. I looked uncomfortable. I clearly didn't fit in, and I was the individual that would, as soon as I got my Christmas money, run to JD Sports and I would buy Mackenzie coats and all this stuff. It didn't suit me. It wasn't my personality, but at that time I didn't know what to do. I wanted to be the same as everybody else. I couldn't understand why I wasn't, and therefore I needed to make a change. And therefore, I just tried to blend, and it became somewhat of a camouflage for me. And it was not a successful camouflage because I was clearly different to everybody else. Everyone else could see it, but I was desperately trying to fit in. And I had some great friends at the time who were incredibly supportive of me. They never used that as something against me, but I think it was always a bit of an elephant in the room because it was something that was really damaging me as I grew up. I couldn't understand, and I couldn't understand why it was so negative, and why it was so harmful to somebody else. Why do you care so much? I could never understand that piece either. Why do you care? What about me? What was it that was so important? And it was always the insult that someone threw my way. If something happened, if I got into an argument with somebody, that was their pinch point for me. And that's so negative and so damaging. but I had, like I said, I had some amazing friends who really supported me throughout the years, and they have continued to support me ever since. You know, there are individuals that I maybe don't keep in touch with in quite the same way, but I absolutely credit them with being my friend through what was one of the toughest times of my life, and I will be eternally grateful to those individuals, and I do hope that they know who they are. But yeah, so I was very uncomfortable and very awkward as I was growing up, and I didn't know what to do and who I was, and I couldn't figure out a way to find myself. I couldn't figure out a way to explore it, and around the kind of year 10, one of my friends came out to me, and that was a real turning point for me, because they were so strong in who they were and stood so true to themselves that gave me the courage to start exploring who I was a little bit more and thinking, okay, so you're calling me this. What does that mean? Am I attracted to women? Am I attracted to men? Am I attracted to both? You know, what does that look like for me? And that process took, you know, a little while, because I think there's a certain amount of acceptance that you have to go through, and you know, you're trying to be quite covert about it as well. You know, you're trying to understand what that can look like for you, but not have anybody else be on the journey. I didn't want anyone else to be on that journey with me. So I needed to do that for myself. And I did as the years rolled on. And actually one of the big turning points for me was I moved schools. And that was a huge, because I was able to be in an environment where I just felt a little bit more accepted, and I didn't have all the baggage that came from before. And like I said, some of the individuals that I was at school with beforehand, I absolutely credit with being amazing supports to me throughout the years. But that alone wasn't enough. I needed to make a change. I needed to start to reinvent myself. And this was part of that journey. I actually probably knew that I was gay from about the age of, I would say maybe 14 or 15, and moving schools was one of the ways that I was able to start to shift myself towards this kind of reinvention. I wasn't in a position where I was comfortable coming out at that time, but it meant that I was maybe getting towards that stage. But still, so I moved schools. That made a huge impact to me, and it never came up. It was never an insult that was thrown at me. I was very fortunate when I moved schools that there were LGBT individuals who were out and who were proud, and that was really inspiring as well. I absolutely loved to see that. Some of whom I'm still incredibly good friends with today, and they really are role models to me. And have been throughout the years. So that was a real turning point for me, and was a place that I could see how acceptance could work. I wasn't in a place to request that acceptance myself, but I could see that there were individuals that were out and proud and were accepted and were loved and were cherished by everybody. And I absolutely loved that. So I was not in a position where I was ready to come out at that point, but I was still somewhat exploring it. And I remember I had an Amazon account, and there was a movie, and I think it was called The Trip, and it was a movie about two men who go on a road trip together and essentially fall in love. And I bought that there was nothing racy about it, but I bought that in order to see, how did that make me feel? Did that make me feel like that was something that that would maybe be a part of my life and could maybe happen for me? And as it happened, it arrived. It was on my 17th birthday. It arrived. I was downstairs, and I'd been out for lunch with a friend. I came home, and the packages were waiting. And my parents were very inquisitive as to what I had bought. And they asked me what I bought. I was quite cagey about it, knowing what I bought and knowing that I wasn't in a place where I wanted to discuss that with them yet. But they were relatively, they tried to encourage me as much as possible to open what was there in front of them. So I opened this, I bought a couple of Sims games, and I'd also bought the Rocky Horror Picture Show, which is one of my absolute favourites. And I felt so embarrassed, I felt so guilty, I felt almost ashamed. And I wasn't in a position to discuss it with them yet. I didn't want to have that conversation. And I justified, they'd sent me the wrong thing. I hadn't meant to order that. I was going to return it, blah, blah, blah. And I actually never watched the movie. I still own it. But it still sits with me as that kind of pit in my stomach of thinking, I wasn't ready to talk about it yet, and I'd almost outed myself at a time that I wasn't ready. And later on, I can't remember if it was the same day or the next day, my mum and I were sat in the living room, and she asked me if I was gay. I lied, and I said no. I wasn't in a place where I wanted to discuss it at that point. I wasn't sure what that was going to mean. There's this inherent fear that I think some people have, where you know the heart of your family and your loved ones, you know that they'll accept you, but there's still this fear that what if they don't? What if they kick me out? What if I get cut off? What if, I just couldn't bear the thought of it. And some people do go through that, and it's horrible, and it should never happen. But it does. And I never wanted to believe that that would be a situation that I was in. And I didn't believe it deep down, but there was still a part of me that thought, what if I'm wrong? What if that is what happens to me? And so I lied. We put it to bed, and we went about our lives. Then, a year later, I was upstairs. It was New Year's Day, 2013, and I was upstairs watching Ugly Betty, and it was the episode where Betty's nephew Justin comes out to his family. They find out by seeing him kiss Austin, and they go about throwing him this massive party, and Mark says, "No, shut it down. He will come out to you when he is ready." And at the wedding, it's still something that makes me tear up to this day, seeing that scene where he dances with his new boyfriend, and his family are nothing but accepting of it. It's a really heartwarming moment, and I think that's something that I was sat watching and thinking, my family are like them. My family are going to love me, and my family are going to accept me. So, and I thought, right, I'm feeling good about this, and I'm feeling brave. That was more about it. I was feeling brave. And I thought, I'm going to get up off my ass, and I'm going to sit downstairs, and I'm going to tell you. I'm going to tell you who I am. And I did. I went downstairs, and I sat, and it was just me and my mum. And I said to her, I remember it very clearly, I said, "Mum, do you remember a conversation that we had a year ago to the day?" And she said, "Yes, and I know." And it was one of those unspoken moments where it was this weight just got lifted so heavily, and I felt that level of acceptance just in those few words, that level of acceptance. And we had a brief conversation as to what that would mean, and as to what I wanted to do next. And I actually did ask my mum to keep it a secret for the time being. It felt good just her knowing, and I wasn't in a place where I necessarily wanted to share that with anybody else. And we did slowly down the line, but that was immediately, that was the only bit of acceptance that I needed. It didn't matter anybody else, what anybody else thought. And I shared that with essentially the main person in my life, and they hadn't turned me away. So that was everything to me. And as time went on, I plucked up the courage to be more open. And it wasn't necessarily a conversation that I had with everyone where I sat them down and I said, "I'm gay," because in all honesty, it would have been like, "Yeah, we know." It wasn't exactly a well-kept secret. But I think everyone was waiting for me to say, "This is who I am." And they could go, "Woo, we can celebrate that with you now," rather than waiting for you to say, "You've now said it. We can now, we love you, we accept you, we always have." And that was absolutely the response that I got from basically everyone. There were some people that didn't accept me and haven't, but those individuals have not been in my life for a number of years and never will be again. But the good thing was, kind of 95% of the people that I spent my life with, they accepted me, they loved me, and what that gave me an opportunity to do was kind of slowly trickle coming out to various people. And then when I went to university, that was my clean slate. That was my opportunity to go to university and say, "This is who I am, and I'm LGBT, I'm proud." That's great. And it was funny because the nickname that they wanted to give me at first was Gay Nick, and I absolutely put the kiboshes on that because I said, it is part of who I am, but it's not what defines me. So they referred to me as Blonde Nick going forward. And and that was fine. I could take that. But yeah, I didn't want Gay Nick to be the nickname that stuck. But it's then slowly allowed me, and it's been a process as time's gone on, you know, I slowly add aspects of my personality into my life, and it's part of who I have been for a very long time, but I will slowly insert it in. So for example, a lot of people have said to me recently, oh, we didn't realise that you wear high heels and you do all of that stuff. I've done that stuff for a number of years. I haven't necessarily felt comfortable enough to do that publicly. So that takes time, and there will be aspects of your personality that you slowly insert as time goes on and as you feel comfortable to do so. So you don't always get everything on the first round, and that's absolutely fine. So it's a journey. It's a journey that I'm going on. I'm working very hard to help educate others as well, and to be a support and hopefully somewhat of a role model to other people as well. And I'm very open about discussing topics in regards to LGBT, but also inclusivity and acceptance on the whole, because that is so important. And you know, there will be times where things don't always go in our favour. You know, as a community, the law wasn't always on the side of LGBT, and there have been some incredible pioneers of this community that have made a difference, you know, throughout the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and the phrase, they walked so we could run, is absolutely true. The reason that I'm able to be the person I am today is because of those individuals that came before me, and I'm incredibly grateful to them for that. So therefore I feel it to be my responsibility to somewhat pick up the baton and take that forward, so that the next generation, the generation beyond that, can feel an even greater level of acceptance, and hopefully don't go through the same nervousness that some of us go through when we think about coming out, and what that may mean for us in our lives. So that was a lot longer than I thought it was going to be. I thought this was going to be like 3 minutes and I was just going to breeze through it. Here we are. But I hope that has been in some way informative, enjoyable. I hope you feel like you've gotten to know me a little bit better as well. I would love to know your thoughts, you know, and please do be accepting of anyone in your life and anything that they're going through as well, and allow people the time to come to you. Don't pressure them, don't push them, let them be who they are in the time that they want to take to get there. So thank you so much. Like I said, if you liked this video, please give it a like, please give me a subscribe, and I really look forward to talking to you in the next video. Mwah, take care.